Number 10. Being a non-human cube? Christopher Hargreaves is quickly becoming one of my favorite characters in Season 3 of the Umbrella Academy streaming series on Netflix. Like most of the rest of the characters and plot in this series, Christopher is a character inspired by their own comic book counterpart. In the comics, Christopher is still a non-human cube who is part of the Sparrows team. In the comics, they are a secret team that exists at the same time as the Umbrella Academy, working in secret to save the world, being brought together by Reginald Hargreaves, but managed by Grace, who the Umbrella Academy, even in Season 3 of the show, still refer to as Mom. Christopher in the show appears to have fear-inducing powers and can also affect the temperature of the air around him, dropping it down to freezing. You wouldn't think a floating cube would be powerful, but of course, Umbrella Academy makes this amazing weirdness possible. Number 9. Seeing really well. When it comes to Eyeboy, many of his powers are tied to him having multiple eyes. I believe in total he has 57 eyes that cover his body. A lot of people relegate Eyeboy to not being that powerful because, well, his mutation seems pretty ridiculous. But in reality, having multiple eyes is extremely powerful and actually has tons of benefits. Kind of like how Cypher was initially thought to have a pretty useless power set with his ability to communicate and understand all languages, until we learned just how universally that actually could apply. The same could be said for Eyeboy. Trevor not only has multiple eyes, but can use them to perceive things others can't. He has microscopic, night, infrared, telescopic, thermal, and even chemical vision. He can also read body language immensely well, allowing him to see into people's true feelings, emotions, and psychology. And aside from that, he can even see through falsehoods and illusions, and see potential weaknesses in his opponents. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists in the series, you know what to do. Hey, make sure you comment down below to let us know and click that like button. It really does let us know that you want more content like this. Number 8. Street existence? I don't even know what to call this power set. Really, it kinda just has to do with what Danny is. Their unique, I guess, physiology. Danny is a street, often known as Danny the Street, and sometimes when Danny has been hurt, Danny the Brick. Danny is a street that appears to those who most need a refuge in the world, the outcasts of society, if you will. Danny provides a safe haven for these people so that they can truly be themselves, living without prejudice or judgment. Being a street is weirdly powerful, and Danny can actually control what is on the street and its decor. Danny can also teleport to anywhere around the world to protect their citizens, which is also kinda weirdly OP for those who both live on the street and of course for Danny himself. Number 7. Light transmutation. Dazzler to me is such an underrated hero. Her powers allow her to transmute sound into light, which on paper sounds pretty lame until you realize just all the things she can actually use light to do, like make light lasers, just super cool. Although Dazzler, aka Allison Blair, prefers to use her powers to jazz up her concerts and musical performances with stunning light shows, although it's never really been explained if the sound is then muted thanks to her doing this or not. I'm assuming not, because people still seem to be able to hear her sing and her band play music. Dazzler also has been called on every now and then to play the role of hero. Daz proved herself to be so powerful throughout her own series, accomplishing things like facing the Hulk and not only surviving, but kinda beating him, and even being considered powerful enough to become a temporary Herald of Galactus. Number 6. Polka Dot Suit. You wouldn't think a polka dot suit would be so powerful, and yet, whether we are talking Polka Dot Man's suit in the comics or in the DCEU film, James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, either way, he's pretty OP. In the comics, Polka Dot Man's suit is tech, where he can basically use the polka dots on his suit to turn them into any kind of weapon that he wants or a getaway device. All the dots kinda do different things. Pretty wild, but also pretty weird. The major flaw being that of course the suit can break down. While in the comics, Polka Dot Man is a villain, in the DCEU, he's more an anti-hero, a forcibly reformed criminal who joins the Suicide Squad and ends up saving the world from Starro the Conqueror. Here, Polka Dot Man's polka dots are actually more intrinsic to him, kind of like really his own power, and they appear on his skin. When he purges them, they can be used as weapons to take down enemies, acting like destructive projectiles. But also, he does kinda need to purge them, so there is that. Here, his polka dot generation is explained as being the result of an interdimensional virus that basically Abner received after his awful mother experimented on him and his siblings. Also, I hope there's more Suicide Squad movies, and I hope we get to see more of his siblings and they're all like just the same actor character, but like different people that have weird powers. That'd be awesome. Number 5. Power of music. Going back to DAZZLER, another power that seems to get overlooked with her and a few other folks is her singing ability. Although it's not specifically a superpower, there have been multiple times it's been kinda used as such. At one point, DAZZLER participates in a singing competition with Enchantress, attempting to win Odin's favor. Although Enchantress is considered to be more beautiful than DAZZLER, Allison still manages to beat her because she's just that good of a singer. And that's pretty impressive considering that Odin is the judge of this singing contest, so gotta impress Odin. And this is a competition where she's basically fighting for her life through song. There have been other such occasions in the comics where people have had to use the power of music to get themselves out of tough spots or to win favor. Music both in and outside of the comics is just a powerful thing. In the real world, even plants can be swayed by its influence and its power. The power of song. Number 4. Battle Precognition. Midnighter is another superhero who has unique powers that many simply don't really seem to think of. But when you do, you realize just how powerful he is. Midnighter basically has a chip in his head that allows him to parse out all the possible outcomes when in the midst of a fight. He can basically run through hundreds of possibilities when it comes to his opponent's next move in a matter of seconds, meaning that he almost always knows which move to make himself to best counter whomever he's fighting. In essence, he has precognitive programming, which allows him to see into the future and kind of better plan what moves to make in the moment in order to win against, well, almost any opponent really. Number 3. Elemental Control. Elemental Control is a power that on paper sounds great, but what if you just have one element that you control? A lot of people feel like, well, then it's not that great. There are a few different points here I'd like to make though on powers in regards to elements. There are those who people think are simply not as strong due to them being tied to, one specific element, and then there are those who are simply underestimated due to the fact that people think they can only control one element or one aspect of the elements, when in fact they can actually control many of those things. Namely, here we are talking about Iceman and Storm. Iceman might not sound so powerful. I mean, back in the day he was kind of more of a snowman even than an Iceman, who mainly used his powers to create ice walls and ice slides, but Bobby has proven over the years as he's honed his powers that manipulation of water in any form is really powerful. He can not only manipulate ice but also water at this point, and is almost immortal, as even when he's destroyed he can basically seemingly regenerate from just a single drop of water or like a piece of ice. He can also create ice golems, which may be sentient even. When it comes to Storm, you might just think of her as an elemental who can control, well, storms, but she can actually do much more than that. We've also seen her control temperatures, heating things up and cooling them off. In fact, Storm is really a master of all elements, so don't let her mutant name fool you. Storm is like an all-around powerful elemental, and not someone you want to mess with. And she's a great fighter, so Storm is really, just don't mess with Storm. Don't make Storm mad, it wouldn't be good. Number 2. Super Speed. Super Speed is one of my favorite all-time superpowers around. I think it is super powerful, crazy powerful really. And honestly, although I know we have famous heroes like the Flash running around, I don't think Super Speed gets enough hype or love or appreciation, which is why I wanted to put it on this list. I mean, the Flash has managed to save and endanger the world using his Speed Force powers on more than one occasion, showing you just how epic these abilities can be when/if you get creative enough. Well, I guess if the writers and artists are creative enough, rather. I guess I should say, since they're the ones telling us the stories. Super Speed is a power that has been used to do a multitude of things, including speed learning and speed reading, which is probably one of my favorite uses for this ability. That and the ability to phase for people that can move that fast. That and time travel, which is another thing people can do with it. You can see Superman use his super speed to do some super fast reading, and you can even see in Marvel the mutant hero Tempo use her ability to manipulate time to speedily run an algorithm created by Forge thousands of times in a few short minutes in order to help her fellow secret X-Men find Deathbird's ship. Now that is more time manipulation, but still, what I'm saying is the faster you can operate something or read, the more you can get done and the more knowledge you're able to have. I mean, Superman, Flash, they could basically both be super geniuses if they just used their power in this way. In theory. Although some people might say that they are super geniuses. I don't typically consider Superman to be a super genius, but he could be one. Man can read like probably all the books in the world in like, I don't know, probably a day or something crazy. He's really fast. Number 1. Oniromancy. While many might not think about how powerful this can be and might be quick to write dream powers off as dreams aren't real. They're actually super powerful. We can look at a few different characters when it comes to dream manipulation. One of the newer additions to Marvel Comics in the world of mutants is Somnus, who was retconned to be a past lover of Akahiro's, aka Dawkins. Somnus's power allows him to put people to sleep and from there basically control their dreams. Therefore, although he and Akahiro only had a one-night stand, in their dreams they actually lived a whole life together. So that one night to them both was basically a lifetime. Similarly, we can look to DC, where we have the Lord of Dreams, now Daniel but formerly Morpheus. Although the Dream Lord of the Endless technically doesn't have a formal name and exists as long as there are dreams to be had. These two versions of the characters though are made to be distinct through the Sandman narrative, so that's why I refer to them as being different people with names, because that's how they're referred to in the comics. Dream has shown us over the years just how powerful manipulating one's dreams and nightmares can be. The answer is it can be like crazy powerful. People are always like, what are you gonna do, mess with my dreams? And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna like trap you in a nightmare for your whole life and then you'll die. How does that sound? Doesn't sound very good, does it?
At number 10 is Bishop. Lucas Bishop is a mutant from the far-flung dystopian possible future where Hope Summers wiped out millions of human beings, resulting in the hunting and policing of mutants by Sentinels under control of the government. From just this alone, his knowledge of possible future events, he has a large amount to offer. But Lucas Bishop also served as a member of the XSE mutant police force, giving him a whole whack of experience using his abilities. Speaking of which, Bishop has the very useful mutant ability of energy absorption, allowing him to absorb the majority of types of energy including magic, sound, light, psionic, psychic, and the list goes on, with no clearly defined limit as of yet. The energies he absorbs can be either environmental or directed towards him as attacks. He can then store or project that energy from his body in different ways, whether in the form of concussive blasts, energy rays, explosions, fire, plasma, and again the list goes on and on. But his favorite use is by projecting the energy out of his XSE weaponry. The nature of his powers makes it difficult to damage him with energy-based attacks, and almost any attack to be honest, giving him nigh invulnerability. But it also enables him to work well with any energy-using teammates. Bishop can also store the absorbed energy within his personal reserves, whereupon the energy increases his strength, speed, stamina, and healing abilities. He is highly underutilized, especially recently, and I think that's gotta change. Alright, at number 9 is Polaris. Lorna Dane is not just a green Scarlet Witch, okay? In fact, she is the real, legit daughter of the anti-hero magnetic powerhouse Magneto. She's been manipulated, used, and been the victim of villains like Mesmero, Eric the Red, the Marauders, Xylodain, and Apocalypse. But she has been a member of the X-Men and more recently is a key member of the newest version of the team. She's always been prominent, but I think a little overlooked in comparison to others, which is a shame. She's actually quite powerful. As the daughter of Magneto, Polaris actually has pretty much exactly the same abilities as him. She can control and manipulate magnetic fields, allowing her to create force fields, fly on the Earth's magnetic field, emit magnetic concussive pulses that can overload and short-circuit electrical systems. She's able to manipulate the natural iron within the blood of living organisms, allowing her to reverse the flow of an entire crowd's blood in order to render them unconscious. She controls metal and magnetism just like her father, but hasn't had as much experience, so her potential has not been fully realized as of yet. Number 8. Forge. Forge has been an important member of the X-Men and mutant community for a long time. But for some reason he always seems kind of unused, at least to me. He is almost like the X-Men's version of Q from James Bond. His mutant ability is that he is an intuitive genius. He can visually perceive mechanical energy, quote unquote, in action. He can just understand how something works by looking at it, as easily as breathing, for example. This power allows Forge to instinctively know and understand the potential and functional operations of any machine or technological device in his visual range. It's a skill that, combined with his natural intelligence, allows him to conceive, design, and build mechanical devices and operate, modify, and disassemble existing technology to create countermeasures for it. It's pretty cool. It's almost hard to explain how this is a power, but it is. It's allowed him to subconsciously invent and construct something where someone else would have to think about it, design it, and then create it. He's been able to just do it, and then deconstruct it later to figure out how it actually works. He's created cybernetic systems, sophisticated holograms, and elaborate computer and fiber optic systems, as well as time travel devices. His potential is vast, and that's before you take into account his magical affinity. And at number 7 is DAZZLER. DAZZLER, otherwise known as Alison Blair, is a mutant with the ability to transduce sound into light. She's also a very gifted singer and performer, which she uses in tandem with her powers to just blow people's minds at her concerts. But she is more than that. She can take any source of sound other than her own voice, unless it's projected back at her, as light energy which she stores up and can use in a bunch of really cool ways. Obviously, using the lights she emits, she can blind adversaries, but she can also create therapeutic light to help allies. Her Dazzle Blast, which is either the worst name ever or the best name ever, is a light show so intense it overwhelms the nervous system of whoever is watching and can knock people out. She can also shoot lasers that can cut through solid metal and photon blasts that strike with concussive force. She can create quote-unquote light fog to hide allies. She can create force fields for offensive and defensive purposes, and she can even fly. She's become the Herald of Galactus in a What If comic, and she was actually one of the more impressive versions of Thor from God Doom's Thor Corps, even coming over to the 616 reality at one point. DAZZLER is awesome and very underused. Coming in at number 6 is Mimic. As a child, a nosy and curious Calvin Rankin accidentally exposed himself to one of his father's experiments. Altering his body and triggering his powers, Calvin soon discovered he was able to mimic the abilities of others who were in his close proximity. He first appeared as an adversary to the original X-Men, copying and mimicking all their powers at once. After he reformed, he was offered a role on the team. Now, as a member of the X-Men, Mimic didn't really get along too well with his fellow teammates, but he was one hell of a powerful asset to them and was responsible for a few of the team's victories. Cyclops resigned as leader shortly after Calvin joined, and weirdly, Professor X chose to make Mimic the team's leader. Over time, other powers he has copied include the powers of Hulk, Banshee, Marrow, Gambit, Rogue, Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, Shadowcat, Pharaon, Meggan, Kylan, Micromax, Rachel Summers, Wolfsbane, Pete Wisdom, Psylocke, Risque, Siren, Warpath, Sunspot, Cable, Caliban, Domino, Boom Boom, Richter, Cannonball, Shatterstar, Post, Blob, Mystique, Toad, members of the Crazy Gang, and so many others. The thing about Mimic in comparison to SYNCH or Rogue is that he copies skills and abilities as well as powers, and even mimics physical attributes, which gives him a degree of more versatility at the cost of lower power levels. But he's still really cool. Number 5, Multiple Man. Multiple Man has such a crazy interesting power. Okay, so I should say for starters that he isn't technically a mutant. Jamie or James Madrox is actually a changeling, which is a sort of genetic precursor for mutants who gain their abilities at birth instead of having their X gene activated later on, like in puberty or whatever. For James, his power is that of duplication. He can duplicate himself multiple times upon impact, and each of his dupes can create one single dupe. One of the real benefits of his power though is that the Prime Madrox will retain any memories of his dupe's experiences. So let's say you had to read like 10 books in a week. Well, you could have like 10 dupes all read one book each, and then when they re-merge with you, you have all of their memories of each book, if that makes sense. Multiple Man is like an information gathering powerhouse. He can also use the ability to learn skills, like one of his dupes trained as a Shaolin monk and trained in meditation. One was a trained EMT, one audited an anatomy class for 6 months, one passed the New York bar exam, one claimed to be the world's greatest detective, and just stuff like that. In his self-title coming from 2018, he even goes into a future world that is completely ruled by Madri, which is the plural for Jamie's dupes. I'd love to see his potential shown in the MCU or something, it would just be so entertaining. And at number 4, Blink. Do you know in the beginning of the X-Men Days of Future Past live action movie when there's that really cool fight scene in the bunker between some mutants and the ultra advanced Sentinels? Now you know that mutant that was firing out portals and stuff and doing all that jazz? That is Blink, and she is so cool. Clarice Ferguson's power has a few different uses. Obviously there are the bright pink portals, but she can also throw that same energy as a sort of missile that will teleport those, or even parts of those, that she hits. The range of her power is actually quite impressive, as it has a potential range of as far as the moon and back, which is pretty freaking far, if you know. With the potential of her abilities and the cool way it is used and even just how awesome it looks, you'd think she would have done a lot more, but she seems to not really have a whole lot of meaningful appearances. Except, if you want to see her being as amazing of a character as she should be, find her in Age of Apocalypse. So cool. Number 3, FIRESTAR. Another pretty powerful mutant who just hasn't had any key moments to speak of. Angelica Jones, also known as FIRESTAR, has the awesome mutant ability of microwave energy manipulation and generation. She uses the Earth's electromagnetic field and converts it into microwave radiation. She also absorbs microwave radiation from her environment and from stars in the galaxy. She can then focus this energy at targets or to do different things. She can set targets on fire, explode them, and even melt them. She is consistently keeping her powers in check because she has the potential to damage the entire Earth and its atmosphere with her abilities, which is why she is even more powerful in space, where she isn't limited by the fragility of the Earth. Out in the cosmos, she has been able to easily produce an attack that injured Garthon Sol when he possessed the energy of the entire Nova Corps. And she also used her abilities to power a massive Shi'ar interstellar transport gate with very little effort. She's even been able to disrupt the psionic powers of others using her own power. Most impressively, Emma Frost. She is still young and learning to use her powers, but she needs to be more than just one of Spider-Man's friends because she is a powerhouse of potential. And at number 2 is HUSK. Paige Guthrie is part of a family that has a lineage of mutant abilities. Sam Guthrie, Cannonball, Joshua Guthrie, Icarus, Melody Guthrie, Arrow, and Jebediah Guthrie, who doesn't have a superhero name. Paige's power is a wee bit unorthodox though. She has the ability to shed her skin, and by concentrating on specific chemicals or elemental formulas, she can cause the layer of skin underneath to be a different element or shape or state. She can become any solid that she has studied and can imitate metal, diamond, granite, wood, rubber, and even glass. She's been shown to turn into a sharp-toothed lizard once, which is weird. She doesn't have perfect control over her abilities at this point in time, but when she transforms, she obviously gains different abilities depending on what she turns into. She's granted herself super strength and durability, flame generation, and many other different things. Her shedding lets her get rid of dirt or sweat and even minor injuries, which is both cool and kind of a little freaky, but she has all kinds of potential if she is given the time to properly train her powers. And in at number 1, MEGGAN or MEGGAN or MEGGAN or however you want to say it. If you were a fan of Excalibur in the late 80s and early 90s, then you'll likely know who MEGGAN is. That's with 2 G's. MEGGAN is a unique character like most of the mutants are. She's a mutant empath with the ability to shapeshift, but she is also an elemental of great power, and she's even got a dose of fairy heritage. Her list of abilities is a little hard to define, as it is with most shapeshifters, and it can even be augmented by her connection with the Earth. She is transformed into a Godzilla-like dragon that could breathe fire, and even a werewolf-like creature with all the enhancements that can afford. MEGGAN has also shown through her environmental connection and mutant empath abilities to be able to adapt to situations and also to the emotions of those around her. So for example, she can grow gills and fur, or become prettier when those around her think she is ugly. She can also turn into other superhumans as well, gaining their powers but with less potential, which even worked when she became a female version of the Silver Surfer, which is kind of nuts. She is resistant to reality warping powers, and she even has a true form where she can manipulate elements, fly, and manipulate magical energies. She is a highly capable mutant and character. She just hasn't really done a heck of a lot since the 90s, and that's a shame. Coming in at number 10 is SYNCH. SYNCH has the mutant ability of power mimicry, meaning, like Rogue, SYNCH can copy the powers of other mutants. Unlike Rogue, SYNCH has the benefit of not doing harm to whoever he is borrowing powers from, and he can also do it without physical touch. Recently though, after being resurrected, SYNCH got a bit of a power boost, and he may even become a new Omega level mutant. In the story, SYNCH not only uses his normal mutant powers to replicate the abilities of the mutants Sunfire and Cyclops while they were both nearby, but is also able to tap into Jean Grey's telekinetic abilities while she is literally all the way chillin' on Mars. SYNCH's growth in power post-resurrection was first noticed back in 2021 2021's X-Men number 18, with SYNCH documenting that he was now able to sync not just with mutants, but other superhumans as well, which is quite the boost, and I think it just keeps going up and up and up. In the House of M alternate reality, SYNCH even got to the point of permanently retaining others' powers, which would be an incredible significant power boost as well. As a main member of the X-Men though, it's kinda hard to be surprised he's getting power boosts, so.
At number 9 is iBoy. iBoy is usually undervalued because he looks really silly, and I get it. He does look like if the drummer for Kings of Leon had 57 eyes, but you should never judge a book by its cover because although iBoy doesn't look very menacing and seems rather confused most of the time, he's actually got a pretty good power set. He's got the ability to see just about anything, no matter how small and no matter how far. But on top of his microscopic and telescopic vision, he can also see basically every light wave there is, including X-ray, infrared, and thermal, among many others, including the magical plane as well. He also has night vision and even chemical detection. That's right, he can see pheromone secretions from people, giving him a tracking ability as well. iBoy is just one of those sad cases where he's just too unsettling looking to really garner much respect for who he really is and what he's truly capable of.
Number 8. Domino. Nina Thurman is a mutant weapons expert and mercenary. Under the name Domino, she was introduced in the early 90s as a member of X-Force. Domino is a survivor of a bunch of unethical scientists who were trying to create the perfect weapon. Tale as old as time, really. But this means Domino has all the talents and skills you would expect of an expert mercenary or secret agent. But we're here to talk about powers, and Domino's are unique to say the least. Domino has probability manipulation powers, meaning she is almost always lucky. She exudes at all times a subconsciously activated field that alters the probability of occurrences in her line of sight in her favor. This means that whenever she is stressed, excited, or focused on something, things will go improbably well for her, and quite poorly for her opponents. Now there is a caveat to this. She needs to actively be trying to help herself for her power to work. So like, if debris is falling from the sky and was about to hit her on the head, she would still be hurt if she just stood still. But if she tried to avoid that debris, she would move perfectly to avoid each and every piece about to hit her. Now the full potential of Domino's abilities hasn't actually been fully realized yet, and Marvel has a knack for updating powers whenever they want. But with an ability to be lucky, there's only a finite amount of things you can't do.
At number 7 we've got Forget-Me-Not. Forget-Me-Not might also be a case of people judging a book by its cover because he doesn't really look too menacing if we're being honest. But to be fair, his powers do also sound pretty lame at face value, so it could be that. Basically, this mutant can't be remembered by anyone he meets once he's out of sight. And as sad as this must be for him in his personal life, Forget-Me-Not can use this power to his advantage in a huge way in the right circumstances. In one case, he's even able to dupe all of X-Force when the team has to form an elaborate plan just to track him down. They're only able to finally catch him by having Dr. Nemesis record himself explaining to the team the existence of Forget-Me-Not as they search for him, and they keep watching it over and over again on their coffee breaks. And the only caveat to this whole situation is that the maintenance bots, along with, I'm assuming, any computer automated system, can remember Forget-Me-Not, which sort of weakens the potential for his powers in a way. So although he's more powerful than you might think, he's still got some vulnerabilities, but heck, everyone does, right? Forget-Me-Not.
Number 6. Dust. Created by Grant Morrison and Ethan Van Sciver for 2002's new X-Men number 133, Soraya Kadir is a young Muslim mutant who's enrolled in the Xavier Institute for Higher Learning. Now she has largely been just a background character in the stories she shows up in, but Dust has been present for some of the largest events in recent X-Men history. Soraya was even one of the mutants who kept their powers after M-Day. Soraya is usually a pretty shy and quiet girl, but don't let that fool you. Her powers are no joke. Dust is able to transform into a cloud of sand, or dust, and even act as a violent sandstorm, literally stripping the flesh from her opponents. When she couldn't properly control her powers yet, Dust even unintentionally flayed 2 men alive after unleashing her power in an act of self-defense. Dust has also been shown to use her power internally, meaning like inside another person, entering her enemy's lungs and eroding them from the inside out, which is just a lovely thought. But wait, there's more. It also appears that Dust is immune to magic and telepathy based attacks in her sand form. The only problem is that if you pull out a hose or like a super soaker or something, she's pretty much done, as she's extremely vulnerable to water. She's a powerful mutant, but sorely underutilized.
At number 5 we have MARROW. I've covered this mutant in almost every one of my lists for the last few weeks now, and for good reason. She is just such an underappreciated mutant considering how versatile and honestly cool her powers are. And if you are a MARROW diehard fan, you know that she's had some difficulties with her powers, which might explain part of the reason why people tend to write her off. Initially, MARROW is unable to control the growth of her bones, which leaves her with some pretty painful and frankly terrifying looking struggles. But these days she's honed her powers and has become quite impressive as a result. Her extreme bone growth allows her to eject super durable spikes from her skin, and then she can use them as weapons. She is adept at hand-to-hand combat, so this, paired with her ability to literally grow her own weapons and then heal up without issue, makes her pretty unstoppable.
Number 4. Jubilee. Jubilee's energy plasmoids might actually be one of the most potent of the X-Men's arsenal. The plasmoids aren't fireworks, even though they look a hell of a lot like them. They're actually closer to superheated plasma. She can create a bolt of bright light, but she can also push out enough power to bend steel or destroy a tree. And with precision can even detonate microbursts inside someone's brain. So that's the amount of range we're talking about here. But that ain't all. It goes even beyond that. As Jubilee's Generation X instructor, Emma Frost, once speculated, if wielded properly, Jubilee could detonate objects on a subatomic level, meaning this unassuming mall rat can cause explosions of atomic proportions. She's a highly underrated character in the comics and gained a lot of popularity in the 90s thanks to the X-Men TV show. And while she's gone in and out of having powers, she still remains one of the cooler characters in the X-Men's lineup.
At number 3 is MORPH. MORPH might sometimes be underestimated because of his funny disposition and his somewhat harmless look. With one of the best personalities out of all the mutants in my opinion, Kevin Sidney uses humor to work through his internal issues after his mother's death. But externally speaking, he deals with his other issues using his totally underrated power set. MORPH is a master shapeshifter, capable of changing his body and his voice to mimic those of others. Not to mention, he's also able to fly at speeds of 40 miles per hour and has a healing factor due to his ability to manipulate the makeup of his molecules. But what's coolest about his powers is that if he chooses to grow more muscles, his strength will actually increase along with his appearance, and even if he can't get his strength up to match his opponent, his defensive stats are insane due to his ability to absorb the impact of any physical projectiles by simply allowing them to pass through him.
Number 2. Gambit. Gambit has the really cool mutant ability of molecular acceleration, allowing him to convert the potential energy of a non-living object through touch and kinetically excite the molecules to the point that they explode. Usually when a mutant has an ability that manipulates molecules, they have a pretty vast array of powers. But for Gambit, he mainly uses his abilities as attacks, charging up his signature playing cards and bow staff. But in an alternate universe, there is a future variation of Gambit known as New Sun, who is what Gambit would be if he reached the full potential of his power. He can manipulate kinetic energy down to a molecular level, meaning New Sun can charge objects and living beings without being in contact with them. He can stop objects that are in motion and make still objects begin moving. He can turn into a wave of energy, letting him travel through space and other dimensions, and he was even able to defeat the Dark Phoenix in his own universe by himself. We do see 616 Gambit use a lot of the same abilities as New Sun in a fight between the two in Gambit's 1999 solo series, but just knowing the potential this awesome Cajun sensation can reach, ooh, it's spicy.
At number 1 is Chamber. Chamber is another underrated mutant with a power set that isn't quite appreciated the way it should be. It may have something to do with the trauma that Jonathan Starsmore goes through to acquire his powers, and further how that experience hinders him from achieving certain goals that other more accomplished mutants are able to. Basically, Chamber has what's described as a furnace of psionic energy stored in his chest, and when his powers are first discovered, this energy explodes out of him, destroying the lower lower half of his mouth and blowing a hole in his chest cavity, forcing him into intensive surgery to reconstruct the lost body parts. Eventually, he hones his powers to a point where he can aim psionic blasts on command, which is kind of like Cyclops, except in this case it's coming out of a hole in his chest. But what's more is that Chamber later learns that he's in fact a descendant of Apocalypse, and he is eventually properly reconstructed by Clan Akaba in the appearance of Apocalypse. Although this leads him into a depression, Chamber then gets a huge power boost from this modification and changes his name to Decibel before joining the New Warriors.
Number 10, 3D Man. Okay, we're gonna start this one out on a trippy note. Meet Charles Chandler. He entered Marvel Comics back in 1977 in Marvel Premiere issue 35. He's an American test pilot who got his powers from radiation after an explosion while escaping Skrulls. Now, Charlie was consumed by radiation and his brother Hal had to witness the entire thing. Super tragic. Now, the explosion imprinted an image of Charlie onto Hal's glasses. So now if Hal focuses hard enough, he can project Charlie back into existence as this man, this 3D man. Now, Hal would fall into a coma when this happens, and over time the brothers would swap on who's actually controlling the 3D man. Mind you, the 3D man is 3 times stronger than the average human being, but he's also 3 times as confusing, because none of these powers should make sense in any way. And before we continue on with this trippy list, guys, if you can go ahead and give this video a thumbs up right at the bottom, that would be awesome. And if you haven't already subscribed, you're here, you're watching, click that while you're at it, and then we can be friends. You guys are the best. Now let's get right back into the video. Number 9, Stone Boy. Dag Wentham is not from Earth, first of all. He's actually from the planet Zwen as a member of the Legion of the Substitute Heroes. He made his DC Comics debut with Adventure Comics issue 306. He comes out of the gate hot. He comes out confident. He calls himself Stone Boy because he can turn himself into solid stone. But the Legionnaires said my power was too static and would accomplish nothing positive. Watch me change. I mean, we didn't need the last 80% of that, but they're also not wrong. Your powers are amazing, but you can't really do much. He just turns to stone. The team uses him by dropping him as a stone on the head of their enemies. That's like when you're playing Smash Bros and your friend picks Kirby and all they do is just float above and then smash down on you. You're like, really? Can we just fight? I'm that person, I'm that friend. So this ability came because his homeworld would rotate so slowly that the nights are a half of a year long. So they evolved super suspended animation. Hypnotic suggestion is the reason he can wake up, but how does any of this even happen? It's not even explained. Does it hurt? Is it itchy? Oh, it must be so itchy. Number 8, Matter Eater Lad. Matter Eater Lad, okay, he comes from the planet Bismol, not like Pepto-Bismol, which you may think it should be after reading this, where microbes made their food inedible and the population soon had to evolve or starve. Now, they didn't turn into farmers, they didn't create new food, they did, however, gain the ability to eat any and all matter. So now we have Matter Eater Lad, aka Tenzil Kem. He was part of that same crew with Sunboy and Stoneboy, you know, that fantastic Stoneboy we just talked about. The dude introduces himself to the team when he eats an old ray gun. He even says yum yum, like he likes the taste of an old ray gun. The team actually decides to use them. They're like, okay, well, he could just literally eat our way to freedom. And then even in the thought bubble, it shows him like eating a jail cell, and they're like, yeah, he's not wrong. It's pretty, we could use him. And then Tenzil even says, I know what's on your mind. I'm unusual. I don't qualify. No, Tenzil, what's on our mind is where does that food go after you yum yum eat it? Like, I'm no doctor, but an old ray gun, that can't feel good coming out. He's like, hey guys, look how many thumbtacks I can eat. The whole team's like, no, Tenzil, wait, no. Number 7, Multiple Man. James Madrox. He made his first appearance in Giant Size Fantastic Four issue 4, and his ability you probably just know by his name. He can make duplicates. He wasn't used very much in the X-Men, and he spent most of his days with X-Factor. Now, his powers may seem weak compared to gods and wizards, but this guy makes me ask a lot of questions, because at one point, James had 40 of him. There are 40 James running around town. That's a lot of James. So the duplicates feel, think, and act independently, but they're guided by the original James. So each of these duplicates manifests one aspect of James' personality, and the longer that they're away from the OG James, the more those traits become extreme. And if one of these duplicates passed away, he can sense the general area where the body is. But there's a logic question to be asked here. Like, for example, if he eats a handful of diamonds and then multiplies into 40 James, and then all those James did the Mama Bird method and, you know, puked up those diamonds, do they all have the same contents inside their stomach? Do we just make more diamonds? If so, we may have figured out a really gross solution to a lot of problems. Number 6, Swarm. Okay, meet Fritz von Meyer. He made his debut in Champions issue 14 back in 1977. And as you could probably guess by his name, he's a swarm of bees. How terrifying is that? He's made of 1,000 bees. This goes back to that one day where he was still just a German beekeeper and he found a beehive that was unlike any other hive he had seen. So he made a device that he hoped would reawaken these bees. And originally he thought that these bees were an end result of a mutation with a nearby fallen meteorite. So he was pumped about it. These were unique bees after all, because when he tried to capture the queen bee, the others just devoured him. They ate him. There were only bones left over. But now these bees were so special because now his consciousness was spread out throughout all of these thousands of bees, and now you have the scariest villain ever. Just a man made of bees. Here, take my wallet, take my phone, whatever you want. Yeah, you're made of bees. I'm not gonna fight you. No way I'm throwing hands with 1,000 bees. Get out of town. Also, that must be extremely hard to do. I mean, he makes himself look like the shape of a human. That's extreme coordination. Number 5, arm fall off boy. He made his first appearance in Secret Origins Volume 2, Issue 46. His real name isn't even known, so now we have to call him Arm Fallout Boy. I mean, Fall Off Boy. His powers are just that. He can take his arms off and use them as weapons. Now, he tried to enlist as a member of the Legion of Superheroes, but was rejected. He was actually the first reject. Matter Eater Lad said that he got these oddly specific powers because he was careless when holding the anti-gravity metal element 152, but it's hard to tell if he was serious. His arms aren't robotic arms, like Bucky Barnes, for example. His arm can actually come off and then you can use it as a metal weapon. Sure, that's great, but it doesn't make a plorp sound, you know? So he takes his own arm off, hits people with his wet shoulder blade, and then just plorps it back on. Wouldn't it be damaged? Also, would he feel the pain as soon as he connected it back to his body and his brain? All the questions. Also, ew. Number 4, Songbird. Melissa Gold made her comic book debut in The Incredible Hulk issue 449. She ran away from her parents at a young age, and whilst developing a hard knock life attitude, she ended up becoming a professional wrestler, giving herself the stage name Screaming Mimi, and then soon joined the wrestling group Grapplers. So the Grapplers were doing great, they were killing it, but they weren't making the same amount of money as the male wrestlers. So they had to take on a new job now, with the Roxxon Oil Company. Now because of Quasar, the mission went horribly and the Grapplers were tried and jailed. Melissa was given vocal cord implants that provided her with acoustic kinesis, hence her first nickname, Screaming Mimi. She can make all these crazy weapons with her voice as well, and even has the ability to craft herself wings with her voice and fly. Somehow. She joined the Masters of Evil in Avengers issue 271, but when she could no longer use her powers, Zemo came in with his accomplice, the Fixer, and gave her new powers with neck implants. Her sound energy is pretty cool, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, she can create solid weapons and force fields, and she can even go as far as to make herself undetectable by others. Fascinating, yes. Confusing. Also yes. Number 3, Bouncing Boy. He made a spectacular arrival to Action Comics in issue 276. He's a member of that Legion of Superheroes that I keep mentioning. So yes, this guy made it through, and the dude who used his arm as a Nerf bat was rejected. What a world. Okay. So Chuck Tane was born on Earth, and he has this unique ability where he can inflate like a beach ball and bounce around. The combination of invulnerability and velocity makes him quite the unit. He got these powers by accidentally drinking a super plastic formula that he thought was soda pop. Does he have to be round? Does he have to bounce around? I feel like his powers are not really specific here. If he's strong and unstoppable, can he just inflate himself a little bit and then fight like a normal person? Like, can he make his fist into extreme sock and boppers and then boing, like they'll bounce away, and then boing, and they'll bounce away? It feels a little bit better than being a beach ball than bouncing around like that chick from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. That sounds like a nightmare. You get a lot more done than being the beach ball of doom, is all I'm saying. Number 2, Jin Genie. Becca Parker was one of the X-Force members. She was introduced in issue 116. Her powers don't make a lot of sense, but they're so fun and specific that I have to talk about her. So the more alcohol in her system she has, the more powerful she becomes. She probably kills it at holiday office parties, eh? Wow. She's the first one going home at like 9 p.m. You're like, really? Oh, Jin Genie, that makes sense. Jin Genie has the power to generate seismic vibrations depending on how much she drinks. Now, it's not specified how this works. Are we talking about the amount you drink or the percentages? Because this one, we could maybe find a solution in time. Finally, number 1, Animal Vegetable Mineral Man. So as crazy as his name sounds, that's just it. He made his first debut in DC Comics with Doom Patrol issue 89. Swedish scientist Sven Larsson gained these incredible powers after falling into a vat of mysterious amino acids. So now he can change any part of his body into any animal, any vegetable, or any mineral. And he can do them at the same time. It doesn't have to be one of them. It can be all of them at the same time and on different body parts. How insane and overpowered is that? So not only does this not make any sense at all, but this is insane. This guy should never lose a fight. The possibilities are literally endless. The fact that he can somehow control all 3 at the same time as well, like, your mind must be amazing.